Well, it comes on the back of another one called the significance delusion, which I think, with the best will in the world, you wouldn't say was a light read. So I wanted to get the message out and make it more specific and more current. And I think the whole business of adolescent mental health over the last few years has really grabbed the headlines. So I'm using a lot of the theories that I developed over years and years and years, working with different groups, teaching and working in prisons and working with people with brain damage and autism and so on. And the one common feature that I saw in problematic thinking, behaviour and emotions was a complete obsession with the self and how the self was reacting to life and feeling about life. So I started to sort of explore more and more the sort of science that could support what I thought I was seeing, left, right and centre. And there's just so much evidence that seems to say that what we are currently doing is not, well, I think we all know it's not working because we're seeing problems proliferating. And even if it comes down to the COVID pandemic, which has obviously caused a lot of problems, there are some young people who've come out of that situation far better than others. Mm-hmm. And it's trying to find the common factors in resilience, I think.
Yeah, when you say it's not working, the figures there about teenagers on antidepressants. Yes. So we're giving people drugs now for antidepressants, and it said drugs doled out to 13 to 19-year-olds increased by 25% between 2016 and 2020. That can't be the way forward. So where do we start to reverse what's going on?
Yes, it's always difficult once you're partway down a route, isn't it, to sort of turn back. You can't go back to the beginning of the route. But I think we need to be doing two things. One is we need to be looking at the mental health of women who are going to give birth and of men as well, because there are all kinds of epigenetic factors in things like anxiety. And that is one of the greatest predictors of ongoing problems through life. So if you've got an anxious person who then goes on to have children, that anxiety is going to be passed down the line. And Sussex University is doing a lot of work on that, and you can actually train people out of anxious behaviours, for example, and you can start to reset the brain. But, as Hamlet said, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So I think part of the way of dealing with the young people who are currently presenting with problems is to use language and self-narrative to challenge their idea that everything is as bad as they think it is. Narratisation has been shown to boost mental health, to protect against PTSD, all kinds of things that, we are now suffering from en masse. So I think we can do some practical things in the here and now. We can encourage people to take part in, for boys, team sports work terribly well. Less well for girls, apparently. But exercise in general, of course, everyone's saying this, exercise, diet, not spending too much time on social media, never smoking, never using drugs. These are all sort of givens for everybody in improving mental health.
When did all this change? Because I always thought Britain was renowned for its stiff upper lip. So when did that reputation end?
I think it's been coming on a while, hasn't it? And obviously the Princess Diana thing was, a bit of a turning point for a lot of people.
Is that when you say Princess Diana, you mean the
funeral?
The funeral?
Yes.
The outpouring of emotion.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, that's when I noticed it changing. When sort of all these people were lining the streets in floods of tears who'd never met her. And I found that quite strange, personally.
Yes.
Do you think that's when that signalled the sort of shift from
it was
stiff upper lip to...
Yeah, I think if that had happened perhaps 10 or 15 years earlier, maybe the majority of people wouldn't have reacted like that. So I think it's an ongoing thing.
So what is it? Is it a self-obsession? I want to outdo you. I feel more, I don't know, a pain than you do.
Yes.
And I want to show you it. And is that down to social media? Because you can show it. Everybody can take a photo. Everybody can emote. Everybody can post something up onto it.
Oh, I think that's... And I used a phrase at the beginning of the book, which I will not repeat here. But, people are getting very, excited emotionally about being able to do that. And, of course, the other thing that was being promoted in business as well as in education and every which way is empathy. And actually there's something rather strange about feeling somebody else's feelings and sharing their pain and things like that. You hear less often people saying, oh, I'm sharing their happiness.
Is there something positive? People would say that there's a positive thing here, that actually suppressing your feelings and all the rest of it isn't good for you, and that actually showing more emotion is a positive thing. That's what. Would you subscribe to that at all?
Well, I think, in the book I make the point that there's a happy medium through all of these things. And no, I don't expect everyone to want to go back, and I don't want to go back to never being able to talk about things. But I make a distinction about the ways in which you talk about things in the book. So if it's just an outpouring of emotion, that is usually just reinforcing negativity, a lot of the time anyway. And so if you revise, rehearse, repeat the same, I'm so miserable, I've got so many problems, you will actually then believe that that is the case. But to talk about the things that are going on in your life in a more structured and helpful way, which involves the rational side of the brain, and that's something else which goes, it's counterintuitive. People have all said, if you're more creative, you can let out your, emotions, your feelings through your creativity. Well, the evidence is that suggests that the more creative people are, actually very often the more problems they have. And we know from brain damage that actually the rational left side of the brain is a more positive and optimistic side.
You've said for a long time, logic has gone for lots of things and placed with emotions and feelings and my idea on things. I think there was a curious thing that Meghan Markle said, I'm an only child. And it was like, well, you're not an only child. She said, well, I feel like an only child, therefore I am. It's my subjective view on the world. Well, you're not. That is now factually inaccurate. Inaccurate. Logic has done, and it's emotion. So going back to the resilience, and we'll end here, because I think this is the positive note that you're talking about. My dad would always say, draw a line, turn the page, you can't go back, so don't dwell on it. So this resilience, and I work with a lot of kids, what would you say the key things are to do?
I think we need to get them to be more curious. We need to change approaches to education so that they're looking at history in a more chronological way, so they realise where they've come from. And we're not doing that at the moment. So I think they need to get perspective, to see that their place in the world as being where it is rather than the only thing in the world. So we're countering solipsism, we're giving them a broader perspective, boosting their curiosity and getting them sort of navigating their thoughts as well as their outside spaces.